Take off the tinfoil hat.
No way.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Book Asylum podcast. I'm Anthony Castro. We have today with us Richard Ryan Rose, Jack Childress, Angel Ramon, Kristen Vincent, and our special guest today is the one, the only Chris Philbrook. I cannot tell you how much I love this man and his books. He's the author of AUD, Adrian's Undead Diary, Tesser, A Dragon Among Us, the Re-Emergence series, and we have
Diggory Finch.
The Darkness of Diggory Finch. It was right on the tip of my tongue. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm good. I got a fan running. I'm in the basement. It's cool down here. I'm content.
Oh man, I'm sitting in my house with the AC on and I'm still sweating.
That's all the devil dogs you've been eating. Swiss cake rolls.
I'm sweating out the sugar.
Yeah, it's actually 65 with a breeze there.
Right.
Man, so what you been doing? I mean, obviously you've got the Diggory Finch stuff. Are you getting back to that anytime soon?
I'm actually working on that right now. I had the 14th book of AUD come out a few months ago. And then I set aside about 6-7 weeks to do the big hardcover Kickstarter, which has like a spin up period of like 20 days or so. And then it runs for 30 days. And then you're into like fulfillment and surveys and all that stuff. And that has dragged on for quite a ways. But probably like 2-3 weeks ago, I started to work in earnest on the third Diggory book. It's about a quarter written right now. So I'm, aiming for, hoping for like an October-ish release on that, but we'll see. I got to get the littles back into school so I can have some time during the day to be productive.
Yeah, that takes up some time there. I understand that completely.
Oh yeah, I love them, but they don't let me write. Not an option when they're around.
As a big fan, we got to do something about that. We need you writing, like, I don't know, all the time, except maybe when you're on the show. Just 24, just write.
No sleep.
I'm trying. I mean, as it is, half the time I'm not in bed until midnight, and I wake up at 5:30 to come down and work. And even then, it feels like it's not enough time in the day.
Well, I can only imagine how full your plate is right now. I mean, you're fulfilling the Kickstarter stuff, you're doing your dice, you're doing the writing, and you got your kids. I mean, when do you sleep?
On a good night, I get 5 hours.
Oh man,
that's on a good night. So
yeah, and everybody thinks it's all fun and games, but a little more to it than that.
It's a hustle. It's a hustle. I don't have like an assistant running around doing stuff for me.
Yeah.
And when you offload tasks to friends and family, you kind of get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And you're usually not paying those people. So a lot of that stuff comes when it comes, and it's not always reliable. So this is my livelihood. This is what I do for a living. And if I want to be self-sufficient and do this, as a gig, then I gotta bust ass,
Yeah.
And I love it. Like, I'm not complaining. Like, it's so much fun. Even when I'm at midnight and I'm like nodding off, I'm like doing fun stuff, so wah.
Now, how many in the course of writing we'll just use Adrian's Undead Diary. So you're, say, writing book 9 and you're making your way through it. How many times have you actually woken up in the middle of the night because something came to you and you're like, I got to get up?
Oh, in the middle of the night, I tend to have like really nonsensical dreams. Like they're not coherent. They're not much in the way of storylines. So stuff coming to me in the middle of the night doesn't really happen. But when I'm driving, that's when like my brain is running. And like I couldn't even tell you how many times I've been like on the highway and like, oh shit, I gotta write that down. Like that fixes the problem that I was confused about, or it makes the plot bunny go away. And also in the shower, like when I'm like, apparently cleaning my balls is inspiration. So, and that's I get out and get dry and get dressed and then scamper to a notebook and jot the notes down as fast as I can. So
we up, Carl is watching. Hello, Governor. How you doing over across the pond there, man?
I tend to space out lately. My wife has noticed me spacing out because I'll be thinking about Bad Wabbit or something, like some plot, or some creature concept or something. And does that happen to you? Does your wife get on to you because you space out or something?
She and I had been dating maybe 2 months, and we were at her apartment she was living in when I met her, and she was like, "What are you thinking about?" And I think I was in the living room or in the kitchen, and I was like, "What?" Because literally something was going in the back of my head, and she's like, "What are you thinking about right now?" I was like, "Well, I'm working on this chapter, and I got a problem with XYZ, and I'm not sure how I'm going to fix it, and I think I'm on the right track, and I was just thinking about it." And she was like, "Does it ever turn off?"
I don't know.
And she was like earnestly asking, like, does your brain ever stop working on these things? And I actually paused and was like, no, there sometimes I get distracted from it, like when I'm on task doing other things, but the moment I get an idle minute, my brain immediately starts going into either trying to fix a story idea or come up with a story idea, or looking at something that's happening in the real world and thinking how it could be included into a story. Like, my brain literally never shuts down. And since then, she's cursed at me a lot about it, because I'll be like thinking, doing something, and she's like, "So hello, like, work later." I'm like, "Okay, sorry."
Sorry about that. Mine just wandered. Dan says, very sure Chris's balls are Jack's inspiration. Okay. Hello, Jackie Poppins. So, And Dungeon Dan to Angel. Hello, rat boy.
Yeah, I know.
Up here all ready. So now, as for someone like me, I'm brand new still to the whole writing thing. How do you keep yourself focused? Like, what I'm stuck with right now is I've got an ending to a book that I'm writing, but I have none of the stuff before it. And like the old expression of, I'm literally making this shit up as I go along. But I've got this thing at the end, and I'm scared to death that by the time I get to the end of it, I'm not going to be able to tie it together. How do you combat that?
The old adage of like, take bite-sized pieces, right? And I've talked about how, like, the way I lay out an outline to a story, which is, I don't always outline in great detail, but what helps me is when I sit down to write a book, I almost always sit down with like 4 or 5 like core ideas for that book. And it's like the beginning, right? Like, I know about how I want it to begin, the approximate scene or the approximate situation and the approximate characters, right? And I usually know how I want it to end, more or less, right? Like, this is how I kind of want the story to end. And then I usually have scenes in between that I think would be really cool, or that involve, characters that are, central to the plot. And I just lay it out in a line, like sometimes literally on paper. And I say, okay, how do I get from this to this? All right, so I just got to do like a scene like this and a scene like that. Okay, done. And then how do I get from there to here? And I need this and that. Okay, done. And I just break it up piece by piece, and I write to that next destination, knowing that those like core ones that I laid out, at the beginning of the process, those are like my benchmarks, where I'm like, I really want to get there because those are the things that I know are going to get me to the ending that I'm going for. And then, obviously, like, being willing to accept that something that you come up with after the fact might be better than your initial idea, right? Like, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've like written something and been like, this sucks. Like, this is not good. Like, this is just not fun to read, and it's a bitch to write. And like, why am I in love with this idea? Like, why did I think it was such a good idea? How can I capture that magic, but write it better? And just being willing to like be flexible and just, roll with whatever's inspiring you at the moment.
Well, now, obviously, all the big fans like me, like Anthony, like Richard, like Angel, all of us, we know the story of where Adrian's Undead Diary came from. But for people that don't know, give us a little taste of how this whole journey began.
Well, without spending 45 minutes on it, I have always been a writer. Back in like 1st and 2nd grade, I have like books that I wrote for, writing projects and whatnot. I still have them around here somewhere. and got through high school and was a pretty big gamer, did a lot of like role playing and stuff like that, and wrote a lot of the stories of the campaigns that we played. And some of my high school friends were like, dude, you should really look into writing. And I was like, nah, I'm not a good writer. Like, that's not my thing. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome, even back in high school. And fast forward a few years, and I got really lucky and kind of backed my way into a job working in development for a gaming company called WizKids Games. And again, after getting that job by a stroke of luck, I wound up getting tapped to write some of the fiction for their website, and fiction that goes into like the back and the front of rule books and like the little sidebars that like tell you who a character is and stuff like that. And I wound up getting some of that work as a gig. Wound up getting laid off because the company got bought out. And at that point, I was probably 28, 29 years old. And I had this like itch in the back of my head to keep writing. And I knew I could write well enough to at least get paid a little, which told me that like, all right, well, maybe if I really work at this, I could do something. Like I could be, accepted as some kind of a writer. And my buddy Joe, who I went to high school with, had been up my ass like a bike seat to just write a book. He just, write a book, dude, just write a fucking book. Like, just do it. And nah, that sounds like work,
Right.
Yeah, no idea.
I met George Romero at a convention, and I stood in line to get his autograph just like anybody else, and sat down with him at his table because he's pretty old when I met him and wasn't really mobile. And I spent about 10 minutes there, and I pissed off everybody in line, and he was just the sweetest guy. And I left that meeting, and I really thought about how he and his like the small production company that he worked for, and John Russo, how they made Night of the Living Dead. And I don't know how much you guys have read into the story of how it came to be, but the long story short is he and his buddy and their company made commercials in Pittsburgh. That's what they did, right? They made commercials, and they said, hey, let's make a movie, and essentially like begged, borrowed, stealed, ran up credit cards, and did everything they could to make Night of the Living Dead. And then here we are 40 odd years later, and they essentially invented an entire genre of film and cinema and books and all that jazz. And I was riding home from that convention, I said, you know what, I'm going to write that book for my buddy Joe. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to write a zombie story because I love zombie stories. And I had a job where I was working third shift at the time, and I had a lot of downtime, and I busted out like what is now basically the first like 25 pages of Adrian's, and I emailed it to him and was like, hey, I'm going to write this book, and I'm just going to send it to you. And he was in the Navy at the time, and he was on a boat in the Persian Gulf, and he wrote me back and was like, dude, this is good. Like you should put it out there for people to read. And I remember thinking like, nah, I don't know, man. Like I kind of want to, but I don't know how to do it. And he's a tech guy. And he's like, I'm going to build your ass a website. I'm going to teach you how to run it. And instead of emailing me the chapters, you're going to post them, and people can see it, and we're going to see what happens. Okay. Whatever. And day one, we had 23 visitors and 444 hits or something like that. And I joked that like about 400 of those 444 were me hitting refresh. And then the next day it was 40 people, and then it was 70 people, and then it was 100 people. And he and I both basically went on this like rampage of promotion. And this is back before Facebook monetized everything. And when you posted, everybody you were friends with saw it. And when you went in a group and you posted, everybody who was in the group saw it. So the ability to be seen back then was just totally different than it is now.
Yes.
And he got banned from so many groups and so many websites posting links back to my website. And I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many things I got banned from, because we were just, trying to share the link and trying to be kind about it and not spammy, but people still would just pull the plug on us. But this was right before The Walking Dead happened. And I basically was able to ride the wave of, the people looking for more in the genre. And within, gosh, I don't know, 6 months or so, the website, we were getting thousands of visitors a day, tens of thousands of hits a day. And a science fiction author who wildly successful guy had read all of it online to research his own science fiction zombie story. And he said, hey, he messaged me and was like, hey, this is who I am. This is my real name. These are all my credentials. These are my links. And I want to put you together with my publisher. And I was like, okay, thinking that this is just some asshole. And, I started getting calls from this guy's editor, and we almost closed on a book deal, but it wound up falling through at the very end for various reasons. And by then the website was just crazy. Like we had like 10, 12,000 people a day, and people were like, just publish something, just put a book out there so we can buy it. Right. So self-publishing was a thing at that point. And I enlisted the help of my friend Alan, who I also went to high school, who has a graphic arts degree. And he and I worked together. We figured out how to format the book. We made the cover and released it. And after book 1 came out, everything was written, right? Like I had 8 or 9 books worth of content on the website. And once book 1 hit, I think on day 1, I think I forget the exact number, but on day 1, I sold a couple hundred books. And I was like, holy shit. Like, wow, that's really cool. Like, can I sustain that? Is that a thing? Like, is that all the 200 people who have ever read it that just, this is all the money I'm ever going to get out of it? And it stayed, it kept going. And obviously I don't sell 200 books a day, but it became pretty apparent that, like, if I kept putting these out, there was people who were going to buy them. And gosh, I think it was about 6 months later, I had a plan to release another book in the series about every 6 to 8 weeks until they were all out. By the time book 5 was out, I was like, I should quit my job, because like I am now making more doing this than I am at my day job. Wow. So I went to part-time, and I worked part-time for probably another 4 months just to make sure that I wasn't, batshit crazy. And that was in 2014, I think. And I've been full-time ever since. So
that's really good.
Wow. And you did accomplish this by just building a website and pimping out the link as much as you could.
Yeah. The joke is the first taste's free, right?
Yeah.
And AUD is a journal style story, right? If you haven't read it, and you're reading this guy as he survives the apocalypse. And part of the allure of it when I was writing it was the entries were posted on the day they were written. So if Adrian wrote an entry on August 26th of that month, today, if he did, it would appear on the website. If he didn't, then he didn't write one that day. And people would read it and be like, wait a minute, this is live? Like, is he going to post tomorrow? And they would come back the next day and be like, hey, nothing went up. And then they'd message me, hey, are you going to put up an entry? I don't know. It's up to Adrian. And they'd be like, fuck you, are you posting? Like, what are you doing? And so like I'd be getting messages at midnight, hey, is he gonna post today? Is he gonna post today? And there would be stretches of a couple of days where he wouldn't post, and they'd be like, is he okay? Is he hurt? Maybe, I don't know, you have to wait and see. But that got people really jazzed and really excited, and then they started to tell their friends about it, and we had great word of mouth. And the timing was just perfect. And because I'm really transparent about stuff, like I let people, kind of behind the scenes more than a lot of people do. And back then I was enlisting a lot of like name a character, like live, basically, like, hey, someone's going to show up tomorrow and I don't have a name for him. What name should they be? And 50 people would jump out and be like, oh, name him this, name him that, whatever. So people got really invested. So when I started to publish, these people they had a horse in the race. They had more than just, I want to read this story going on. They wanted to share with their friends and family. And I got really, really lucky. Right time, right idea. And I've been able to sustain it. Yeah. I've used that expression more than once, where like AUD is my lightning in a bottle, right? Like that was the best thing I've ever done, and probably will be the best thing I'll ever do. And hopefully it continues to connect with new readers and listeners, and I can keep doing this writing gig.
Well, I honestly think that anybody who hasn't read it needs to go read it. Without any bullshit, can say that AUD has literally changed my life. So, I mean, it's a great story written by a really great guy, and anybody that hasn't read it, I I encourage you to go read that immediately, right
Thank
now.
you.
Yep.
Go.
Hurry up. Hurry up.
Now, I'm with you, man. Just having the first 2 books of the Diggory Finch series out, man, you got something there. I mean, this could be the return of AUD all over again. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
then what's funny, the cover, where you got Knife Eyes, that the one character. Anytime there's certain trailers that I'll unload and I'll have my LED lights on my forklift on, and it hits the nose of the trailer, and I'm telling you, I think of that cover every time without fail. I try to take a picture of it to like send to you, and it does not come out like what I'm seeing.
Well, yeah.
Just like every time I'm like, ooh, Diggory.
So cover villain, Jeremy Flagg, the guy who did the covers for that series, and he did the relaunch of AUD. He's a writer, and he gets the whole process and understands like how covers are important, and he's got years and years of graphic arts experience. He's a phenomenal cover designer. I highly recommend him. But we sit down and we have conversations like, okay, what's going to resonate? What's going to look good? What are people going to remember? And the amount of details that go into those covers that people still haven't caught on to, that like I don't want to tell them, right? Like I want people to be able to message me and be like, hey dude, is that I'm seeing? Yeah, don't tell nobody. But like he puts so many details into those covers, and it's just awesome to see, and awesome to hear that people see it and they're they put some kind of an impression on you.
That's really good.
Cool, yeah, because you do have some of the coolest covers. Now, how many different iterations of AUD covers are there?
Of book 1, the hardcovers are the third iteration. All of the other books they've had a single cover. We've had to redo slightly a couple of them because Amazon kicked them back, and we're like, this is too bloody. Or it's too dark or whatever, and we had to make like very, very small color changes or saturation changes, but for the most part they're all still rocking the original covers.
Okay, very, very cool. Carl Meadows said Jack's running out of time to get himself into AUD. He's in nearly everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty accurate.
I said that earlier on the
Adrian
last
says Jack
Twitter.
shit a lot. You can put your crown on that if you want to.
True.
Preemptive strike.
Yeah, I said that in the last interview. Jack's in more books than anybody I know.
Yeah, he must be elected.
He's going to be in my series, so it's like, what the hell, Jack? Are you
Yeah,
getting
Jack,
royalties for any of this?
I mean,
Not a
helping
dime.
me with quote unquote homework assignments. He'll give me 3 words to, incorporate into a writing. So
good exercise. I mean, that's how my
Really
short
is, yeah.
from was. I was given 5 things, and they said, get these 5 in there, make the story about whatever you want, but these things have to be in there, and they can't just be just background noise. Like they have to be, impactful, or at least the imagery needs to pop, when you write it. And next thing I know, I got a story about a hairless cat that can grow quills and launch them like darts. So
Well, I think you're going to be the biggest unknown known in history.
Yeah, 1,000 years from now or something like that, he's going to be one of the 8th wonder of the world. Who is Jack
Right.
Childress? Why is he in so many damn books?
I think I'm going to make some shirts and put them in my DMW Comics store. Who's Jack Childress?
yeah, a little bit the beard and everything.
Oh yeah, put a goat on the front.
Oh yeah, I am known for the goats too for some reason. I haven't totally figured that one out yet, but okay, I'll own it. It's fine.
I'm still mad at you that
I
you
think it has something to do with the beard, buddy.
It's getting a little out of hand. I know.
I actually listed your picture, Jack, as one of my fur babies. As one of those posts in one of the groups that said, show your fur babies. And I shared a picture of you in your goat costume.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
he shared one with me and him and Pat at the author con when I was in my cow suit. I really wore it.
Own it. Run with it.
Now, the one thing I've noticed with the books of yours that I have got to check out, it feels like a lot of your personality like the real Chris Philbrook comes through in these characters. You know, are you really as sarcastic as Adrian?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That is one of the
Yeah.
Well,
qualities.
the original genesis of the story was when I was writing it for my buddy Joe. It was just me, and I was writing Joe the story of me surviving that apocalypse. So the original Adrian was me. And when we went to post it to the website, I was like, I can't be me, right? I can't name the character after me, and I can't make him exactly like me. So I invented Adrian to kind of step into my identity per se. But Adrian's sort of like banter and the way he talks and the way he interacts with people is like probably 75% me. And I think people identify with that because he is very unpolished and kind of raw and a little inappropriate. And you know, he's also like sweet at the same time and like awkward, and many of the good parts of me are in him, and a few of the bad ones as well. So
I can tell you when I first started reading Adrian's or actually listening to it, because when I was working doing dishes and I was listening to the audiobook, I literally just came across it, you know, by happenstance. I was just looking for something new to listen to. And I was like, I'll give this a fucking try, whatever, you know, and I put it on. And I mean, not even 5 minutes in, I was like, what is this? I was like, this is great. I was like, who is this guy? And so next thing I know, in less than a month, I had already gotten up to Cassie, and it was just like, dude, this is just a great series. I was laying in bed with my wife listening to it. I was like, you got to hear this stuff, dude. It's so great. And so now it's like a household name around here. Chris Philbrook and Adrian's Undead, man.
tell your wife I said sorry.
She loves it. She loves that shit.
All right, something I want to know is, how did the banana box become a thing?
Oh, I mean, how are they not a thing?
Right?
We had moved fairly recently, you know, like a year before I started writing AUD, and I remember, I think it was my parents were like, yeah, banana boxes are great. You just put something in your bottom and it's perfect. You know, they got a lid, they got a handle, they got everything. And I remember getting boxes for the move, and, you know, I went to the produce department and they had like 6 banana boxes, and they were perfect. Like, they were great. And when I went to write the story, if you go back and you look at how Adrian's like first 3 months of the apocalypse unfold, I deny him many of the resources that people would think would be pretty common and pretty accessible. And I do that specifically because if I gave a character like him all of the things that he could put to use that early in the story, it would be a dramatically different story, right? Like if he found an AR on day 1, good game, right? He's, you know, he's moving up into the hills and Adrian masturbates his way to the next century. But I didn't want him to have a good backpack. I did not want him to have a great gun. I did not want him to have, you know, all the best medical equipment. I did not want him ready. I wanted the story to unfold with obtaining those items being a big part of it. You know, I wanted the struggle to find stuff to be you know, integral to his kind of thing. So, you know, yeah, he could have, you know, went and got a North Face jacket right off the bat, and he could have gotten an amazing hiking backpack, sure, but it's way more fun to have him carry around his shit in a banana box, you know, and have him be really excited about finding a can of, you know, cranberry jelly. Because it's just kind of, it's humanizing, you know, like you grab everything you can, throw it in a box as best you can. Where's my fucking cat? You know, and just like deal with that chaos and let it kind of unfold. And I think people dig that, you know. I mean, obviously there are people who want to see, like, you know, Delta Force space shuttle, you know, door gunners, you know, surviving the apocalypse and shooting their way through with their, you know, night vision, aim point, EOTech, you know, HK 416s. And, you know, that's a completely different story. And I've written some of that too. But that's not Adrian's story.
Now I gotta ask, you said the can of cranberry is the stuff that he's talking about, like getting excited about, the venison, the bread in the can, the cranberry stuff, is that all stuff that you yourself enjoy?
I don't like French cut green beans. And that comes up more than once.
Yeah.
But I remember my mom had an affinity for them growing up. And like as a joke, it was like, yes, they're the Cadillac of canned vegetables,
Yeah,
but
they are.
me personally, I hate the damn things. I do like the canned bread, like that stuff's yummy. It's like, gingerbread. And cranberry jelly. The funny thing about the cranberry jelly was I had visited my mom at one point, and I remember I went into her cupboard to get something, and on one shelf, all there was one can of out of date cranberry relish. And I remember being like, Ma, like, what's going on? Were you saving this for a different Thanksgiving? Is there like a holiday in the middle of the year that we use this for that I'm not aware of? And it's like 2 years out of date. Like, huck it. So when I was writing that scene where he goes to try and rescue his mom and he winds up like raiding her cupboards, I thought it would be really funny to include that. Because it's something that kind of really actually happened.
Yeah, that's cool.
Hey, Chris, just want to interject real quick. Kristen had to jump off, and but she wanted me to let you know it was great meeting you, and she can't wait to read your story. So
awesome. Take care, Kristen.
Okay, and we also have Miss
Ollie.
London Blue joining the group here.
Hey.
What's up, London?
Hey,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
She's just watching.
Well, feel free to jump on in here.
Front row tickets to the shit show.
do you have any questions?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm enjoying
She's just
listening to you guys
happy
chat.
Okay, so
I am really intrigued with the character Adrian, and I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of that book.
I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, there's no way you can't. It's
Yes.
just it's
I have reviews that would disagree.
well, there.
So-
Oh, that makes then that makes it
Who
even,
doesn't?
that makes it even more enticing.
Some of my best reviews are the bad ones.
They're tasteless.
Right. Character
Yeah, well,
swears
okay.
too much, talks about sex and masturbation. Like for my target audience, they're like, done. Give me all 8.
So
Well, they always do say that there's no bad publicity, so
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
publicity.
I got complained on about the language in my books, and just the other day, and it was still a 4-star rating. So okay, I'll take it. But
I mean,
I was hooked until I heard all the foul language. I think my mom might have written that review.
well, fuck her.
Who
Now-
knows, right?
I'm
You
a
don't like
comic
it, don't
book
read it,
guy,
Mom.
and I don't want to self-promote, but I know you have recently picked back up a comic book that you had been working on. What is that called, and how is it going with that?
Slow but steady. My end of it is done. The book is written. A
What's it
few years
called
ago, Rock Jockeys
Cool.
is the name of it, and it's basically like a steampunkish fantasy story about
Wow.
a world where the clouds hardened and
Ooh.
they stayed in the sky, and people can like go up to them and walk around on the clouds, and it like created this like whole second world. And they also found that you could like chip off pieces of the rock and it would float.
Cool.
And they used that sort of magical cloud rock, they call it skystone, to like basically make like airships and flying ships. And they learned that there are different kinds of it that you could like burn basically to create like jets.
Oh,
So it's a story about a young character named Ifra, who gets sort of wrapped up in this sort of like pirate attack on her city, where their mother is kidnapped, and they have to go rescue her. So
man, that
That
sounds
sounds really cool.
yeah, it's kind of like Indiana Jonesy meets the Rocketeer. It's just fun. It's cool. Jason, the guy that I'm partnered with on the story, Jason DeBee, I think he's on page 3 or 4 now, of Pencils and Inks, and I think we might sub out the coloring, because there's a bunch of good colorists out there that are looking for work. And it takes a long time to do a page, and I think right now the story is sitting at around 40 pages. So
you're shooting for a graphic novel.
Almost, yeah. We Jason's work schedule does not allow him to create 20 pages every couple months for multiple releases. So we're like, yeah, let's just do like a big one and then see what happens. So we'll see. I'm excited. It's a fun story.
I
And
understand.
he's a fantastically talented artist,
Yes, he
and
is.
like it'll be awesome if we can get it done.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, man, and I'm gonna post it everywhere once it comes out.
Thank you.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I had to drop
Go
the
ahead.
video there for a minute because the tablet I was sitting outside was starting to get a little hot, so everything's really jerky. But I could see it look jerky on the thing, so I'm like, let's just drop this camera.
Phrasing, Jack. Phrasing.
Ah, well,
Jesus.
but in-
There could be children watching.
I think I'm like one of the biggest kids watching currently.
Touche.
Okay, now I was going to bring up Tesser because I love that dragon.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
What made you decide I want to write a dragon book? And more specifically, how did you come up with the whole notion of how Tesser actually works in that world?
There was a lot of drugs involved. No, so I mentioned that I did a lot of role playing growing up, and one of the campaigns, one of the stories that we played when I was around 18 was a modern day campaign where Alan invited us to play like a monster hidden in the real world. And that was going to be the premise of the game. We were all going to be a monster, and we all had to figure out how to navigate the real world. And I was like, can I do a dragon? Like, can I be a dragon? And he was like, sure. Like, I don't know how the fuck that's going to work out. And we basically invented what, the premise that's in the Tesser book. And the name of my character was Tesser, and he was the dragon. And after the success of AUD, and once those were all kind of in process and releasing, I did the Elmoran books, the dark fantasy ones, which didn't really do a whole lot, but I kind of cut my teeth on that. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if I wrote a story about that old campaign and like finished it? Because we never got to finish the campaign, as that often happens with gaming. And I asked him, I was like, what was going to happen? Like, what was the plan? Like, what was your arc? And he told me the whole story, and I took his notes, and then I rewrote it to be a little bit more fitting for a novel. And basically the campaign is what book one is. And then everything after that is just my kind of expansion on the universe, and adding to it, and, seeing, what other kinds of monsters are running around.
Yeah. Tesser was great, but I'm telling you now, I did really, really like Amber, and that was fantastic. I love vampires. Not to give too much away, but very good, very good.
Thank you. I like book two as well. Book two was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really good. I've listened to it quite a few times.
So we're at what? Is that 14? Oh, okay. So we're at
14.
I'm going to pause for distraction here. Okay. All right. So we're at what? 14 Adrian's Undead books right now.
Yeah. Plus the 7 releases in the Tales series.
I was going to say, yeah, that doesn't include the spinoffs and the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl
21 total titles plus Carl's Loki trilogy, which probably will eventually become 5 books. I know he's got a couple more written. So
That's amazing.
Cool.
That's amazing.
I'm seriously looking
it's
forward
pretty
to
crazy.
more adventures with Loki, man. I just love that character.
I
She's
do too.
great.
Yeah.
And I mean, and her attitude, she's got this just devil could care, care whatever attitude, just cruising through life like, what else, no big deal, just going to get through it. And then she's got the counterbalance, with Nate trying to keep her on the straight and narrow and doing as well as he can, I would assume, but still, I mean, it ties in so well. When you guys first, how late in the game did you start thinking we need to get these characters to cross over at some point?
Ooh, I I knew when I started to write books 9 and beyond that I wanted Adrian to move to Europe and have the story head in a completely different area. So before Carl, came around, I knew that that was going to happen. And I think I forget the exact timeline, but I was probably on book like 10 or so when I was putting together the anthology that he sent over, the beginning of what is now the first book in the Lockheed trilogy. And he was like, hey, I just wanted to send this over, see if you wanted to put in the anthology. And I read the first 2 chapters and was like, shit, this is good. Like, all right, yeah, you're in, buddy. And then he was like, yeah, so there's some more. I have a whole book and a half written. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like a novel? And he was like, yep, I just kind of doing it for fun. And the son of a bitch had written a novel and a half of fan fiction.
Wow.
And I was like, send it over. Like, let me read it. And after reading the first book, I was like, we gotta do something with this. This is really good. And knowing that Adrian's story was going to wind up in Europe, it was kind of a perfect precursor for people to kind of read about what was going on, where he was going to wind up. I did not have a specific outline or plan to have him head to that part of England for any reason. But once Lockie kind of entered the picture, it was like, oh, okay, all right. Where's that again? How can I make that happen? And as he was writing and as I was writing, it just kind of like, just moving, the train tracks a little closer to each other. And then finally we were able to cross over at what is it, my book 12, I think it is.
Yeah.
So
Man, Lockie was a freaking wild ride. That was definitely a cool addition to the series.
yeah.
And I hope that there's a big time jump in there, like a pretty big time jump between the second Lockie or third Lockie and Adrian and her meeting up.
Yep.
And I would really like to see what happens in between the third book to when she meets Adrian. I'd like, because there's a lot of story to tell.
That is what Carl has written.
Wow. Nice.
It fills that gap.
Awesome.
Allegedly. I haven't read it yet, but allegedly. So
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yep.
If for somebody who has never read any of your books, what would be your go-to that you would send them to read first?
So when I'm asked similar questions at like a convention or, in an interview, my default response is, well, what do you like? Right? Like I want people to gravitate towards the subjects or the stories that they would read naturally.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it is the thing that people gravitate to most is the Adrian's series. And I think that it's kind of the bedrock of like my writing experience. So I usually wind up pointing people there. Also, like from a purely selfish standpoint, if they like it, there's 14 books in the series. And like that helps me pay bills. But yeah, I would point them towards the beginning of Adrian's Dark Recollections, book 1.
And do you leave Easter eggs along your books along the way?
Oh yeah.
Or back to everything that where you started? Yes.
Almost everything I've written has at least a hat tip to at least one more thing that I've done. And sometimes it's like a very blatant tie-in. I wrote some young adult science fiction under the pen name W.J. Orion, and most of the characters in that story are literally just the characters from Adrian's. I just like used all the same names. So when people were reading it, they'd be like, oh, obviously Chris wrote this. And like there's a lot of carryover with like some of the decisions that the characters make, because it's like the same sensibilities kind of passing over. So that way I can kind of still stay on brand, but like write different stuff that's interesting.
Okay, and one more question, just out of curiosity. If your books ever are turned into a big silver screen movie, would you be interested in doing like those little cameo appearances like Stephen King does in his?
Of course, yeah, totally. That would be so much fun.
That would
Right?
I'd take any role. I'd be the drunk at the bar that gets his ass kicked or something. I don't care.
And you'd be in the movie.
Yeah.
So I've gone on at length about this the past few years, but we were like almost signing papers for a TV show last year, and it wound up falling through for various reasons. And we had a lot of those talks where it was like, you know, casting call kind of stuff and like producers and directors and all that stuff. And it's a bummer that, you know, it didn't work out, but the reality of it is usually it doesn't work out. And you know, the fact that I was having like conversations with like TV producers and movie producers and all that stuff was like, I mean, that's just amazing. But you know, the other question that I get is like, would you want to play the main character? And no, like, no, I can't act, for one. Two, I'm fat. And three, I have no interest in trying to like be a dramatic actor. But it would be really, really cool to be like a zombie in the background, or, you know, somebody who gets shot in a scene or something like that. Like, it would just be really cool.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Which book would you want to see turned into a movie?
I mean, if I had to pick something, Tessa was written to be very cinematic, but as a movie, like it's a very contained, like short storyline that could fit a movie. I would love to see that as a movie. Adrian's couldn't be done as anything other than a TV show. It's the scope of it is far too large to try and fit in even a trilogy of movies.
I think it would be better as a show, and I think your cameo could be the zombie in the swing.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun.
For sure.
I would totally do that. That's a recurring role. Like, I'd get several
Exactly.
seasons worth of acting paychecks out of that. That'd be great.
One of the reasons why I asked those questions is because typically if you ask an author if one of your books could be made into a movie, that kind of lends towards what your favorite book you've written is as an author without coming out and saying it.
Yeah.
Because it has more visualization typically.
I mean, I also think cinematically, right?
Right.
So like when I think of like what would be really cool to sit down and watch, right? Like I think the better story is probably Adrian's, in terms of like the depth of the characters and the complexities and all the subtexts and all that stuff. Like that was probably the best story. But the coolest movie would either be Tessa or Colony Lost. Those two are by far and away the most like screen exciting of the things I've written.
Awesome. I can't wait to check them out.
Thanks.
I'm still trying to convince Mr. Chris here to do a graphic novel of Colony Lost. That would be fan-freaking-tastic.
I got a question for you, Chris. So you used to write plots for, did I cut somebody off? I'm sorry.
No.
It was just Anthony.
Yeah, it's just me. Nobody listens to me.
Yeah, whatever. Now go ahead and finish your sentence there, Anthony.
I'm done. You're good. You're good.
Okay. All right. So I forgot what I was going to ask you. No. So you said you work for these video game company, writing plot lines and stuff. Is that? I mean, obviously these video game companies like Naughty Dog and all the big names, they obviously they have to have a team of writers to come up with the storylines. Do you have any advice for anyone trying to break into that type of career field that may have some experience at writing?
I think with all the layoffs that have hit recently, the market, the landscape for gaming writing is pretty weird. I just read an article that BioWare just laid off like a huge chunk of people, and they wound up cutting like a bunch of the writers that like made the game Dragon Age as great as it is. And they were like, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's other companies too, by the way. Not just BioWare. I think it's many other companies. I know Activision did lay off too.
Yeah. The whole industry is shrinking. But there's been a lot of bloat too. Like they had those AAA games coming out, and they were expecting billions of dollars in sales, and then the market gets flooded, and people only have so much time to play, and
Right.
every game can't make $1 billion. There's just there isn't that much money or interest.
Not to
that-
mention there were some bummers as well. There were some games that were bummers.
Oh yeah. COVID did not help with that. But as far as getting into the writing for the gaming industry goes, it requires a skill set that's closer to like script writing. And
Yes.
like comic book scripts, screenwriting scripts. It's more like that because you're writing dialogue that's going to be spoken usually or narrated. So practicing your skills in terms of how to write, a cohesive script would probably be where I would start if that's the direction you wanted to go in. Pick up some of the guides on like how to write decent scripts. Also, be in constant contact. So I got my job in gaming from posting on forums. Like I literally was just a member of the forums of a game that I was interested in, that I was having fun playing. And I was such an active member of the community that, the devs saw my participation in the community and were like, hey, this guy talks a lot, conducts himself well enough, and clearly knows what's going on. Like this person understands, a little bit more than just, rolling dice and clicking a mouse. So I put myself in a good position to be noticed, and then capitalized on it when I was reached out to. So you need to be able to be discovered, and when they put out a job opening for anything game related like that, they are inundated with resumes. I forget who it was. I think it was Gearbox Studios put out a call for a writer to work on the Borderlands franchise like 2 years ago, which literally is like my dream job. Like I almost stopped and just like sent in my resume on the spot.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I later read that they got something like 3,300 applicants.
Wow.
And I mean, how do you go through that? Like an entire HR department would take weeks to just read through the basics of the resumes just to get down to like 50 people. And then what? They're doing 50 interviews, So when the openings appear, yeah, sure, you can apply. But at that point, they're probably running it through an algorithm, looking for very specific things on your resume, and the computer flags, right? The computer flags those 50 people that have them.
Yeah.
And then that's it, right? So if you happen to write your resume without the right keyword, or you don't have a certain thing, that you filled out, you're just not going to get even on their radar. So you got to be on their radar in other ways. You have to be an active member of the community. I think you need to be reaching out. I think you need to be vocal. A lot of these streamers now are getting hired to either as play testers or as people who are getting brought in because they wind up becoming a face of the company where they have clout. They're not just someone applying for a job. They're someone who has an active role in the community. So script writing, be discoverable.
Okay.
Right.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, guys, looks like we're coming up on the closing out of this thing here. Anthony, you want to try to take us to the barn?
I guess I could try.
My butt just puckered.
Just take
Well,
a deep breath, Anthony.
We're coming up on the end, and just like every time we close out, we go around, let everybody know where we can find it. Let's start today with Mr. Angel Ramon. Angel, tell us everybody where we can find you.
You can find me on Amazon. Just type in Angel Ramon for my horror stuff, or Anxious Maximus for my historical fiction. Right now, I'm working on editing and formatting Pina Canadas and Wax 2, which is coming out September 15th. It's doing pretty good on pre-orders. It's already hit 80 of pre-orders, so that's really, really good. I mean, for me at least, that's probably rookie numbers compared to the bigger authors out there. But I'll take the win. And
Awesome.
so then maybe sometime next week or the week after, I'll be working on Pina Canadas and Wax Book 3.
Ah, cool.
Awesome.
Looking
Congrats
forward
on that, by the way. That's awesome.
Yes, very
to
cool.
that person's
Richard R. Rose, tell us where we can find you, sir.
Okay, you can find me on Facebook on Richard R. Rose author page. You can find me on my website, richardrrose.com, as well as Amazon, Audible, iTunes, Goodreads, and all that good stuff. My series, Wild Eyed Southern Boys, 3 books out now in all formats, and working on book 4 and currently constructing. Try not to throw out too many spoilers, but I'm currently constructing a new version of a terrible villain from the previous book, and I'll leave it at that.
Oh no.
Hmm.
All right. The beautiful London Blue, where can we find you?
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty easy to find. I've got my books on Amazon, Mass Mayhem, Melodies, The Last Call, The Tabar, which has a lot of video gaming in it. But yeah, you can find me on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, under WD London Blue. So
Awesome.
hope to see you guys elsewhere.
Oh yeah.
We-
Right.
And Jack the Goat Childress, where
That's
can we
right.
find you?
Well, you can also find me on the Book Asylum podcast page. You can find me in Written Undead. I tend to creep around Written Apocalypse from time to time. Don't have a website or anything, but I do have a short story in the Word Peddler magazine that you can find on Amazon. That was put together by the wonderful and awesome DJ Cooper. Go check her books out too if you get the chance, because they are great post-apocalyptic and dystopian tales. Love that stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it, other than being here every Saturday hanging out with you guys.
That's cool, man.
Awesome.
If anybody's interested, you can find me at dmwcomics.com, DMW Comics on Facebook. And right now on my website, you can get my Bad Wabbit #1 for $5 digital copy. And that's about it for me and Mr. Chris Philbrook, the amazing man himself. Where can we find you?
I'm like air. I'm everywhere. If you plot my name
He's
into
omnipotent.
Google, Google will help you find me. And most of my social media handles are Philbrook author. And you can read it. It's backwards here, but it's Philbrook with a PH.
All
Mhm.
right.
That's impressive.
Well, for everybody here, Richard Ryan Rose, Angel Ramon, London Blue, Jack Childress, and the amazing Chris Philbrook. I am Anthony Castro. This was the Book Asylum podcast, and we are out. Have a good day.
Yeah.